Hello, I am Ustym Shchohlyk, and here's everything you have to know about Russian Hitlerjugend. You have possibly already noticed that Russia resembles Nazi Germany in more than one way, and one of the trademarks of Nazi regime during World War II was Hitlerjugend. And since Russia follows Nazi Germany closely, it follows this step too. Today I am talking to you about Russian Hitlerjugend, Yunarmiya, or Young Army. Yunarmiya, as it is stated in the registration in Russian governmental services, is a all-Russian military patriotic social youth movement. And in the same registration document, it is stated that Yunarmiya was created for education of young people in high civic and social activity, patriotism, devotion to the ideas of internationalism, opposition to ideology of extremism. Let's break it into the parts. I will start with the name. It doesn't really happen that often when Russia calls things with the names they are, and this might be the exclusion, but yet there are still some lies. First of all, yes, it is definitely an all-Russian governmental funded, that is why it is all Russian, military patriotic organization, because the main goal is to teach young people, young boys and girls from 8 years old how to use weapon, how to fight, how to use tactics to kill Ukrainians. Of course, they are also taught about the ideological basis of the idea of the Russian world. Don't be worried. I will break down the thesis I have told you later into this video, especially for you. By this time, the Army of the Youth's name was filled with truth, which is unexpected. But here starts the lie. It is called social movement, yet it is really nothing social about it. And we can find out about the reason I say so when we break down the thesis in the registration. And now I am breaking it down step by step. For education of young people in high civic and social activity. It sounds reasonable and also good, until you find out what Russians mean about high civic and social activity. In USSR, when Stalin was still alive, there was a international hero of the USSR called Pavlik Morozov. It is a little boy who found out that his parents didn't want to give away food or land they had to the People's Party, to the Communist Party. After finding out this horrible crime of not giving away the food, not to starve, he ran as fast as he could to the nearest Soviet officer and heroically informed him that his parents are traitors, that they are against communist revolution. This process of informing higher authorities about such traitorous acts, such traitorous criminal activity from your close circle has one word. It is called DONOS. And DONOS is a very old Russian tradition, and people do like it. People DONOS on each other all the time. Boys and girls from 8 to 17 years old in Army of the Youth, in Young Army, in Yunarmiya, are taught to DONOS on each other and on their parents, on their friends, on the traitors of the state of Russia, of the Russian Empire. I continue with a quote. Patriotism. I have to stop here. You understand the word patriotism as love for the country, as making something for the good of the country. And in the case when you find out that something is wrong, you have to fix it, or at least tell someone who can fix it. Yet patriotism in Russian heads, in Russian idea, is something else. Patriotism in Russia is acknowledging that the state is higher than life, that you can live in shit, but the state is glorious, and if you say that it is not, you're a traitor, at least in your head. I continue with the quote. Devotion to the ideas of internationalism. It is just complete communism. Nothing to tell here. Opposition to ideology of extremism. I will stop here just for a brief moment. You have to understand what extremism means in Russia, and I will just give you a couple of examples. BBC, Fox News, CNN, and other Western news media are considered extremistic. LGBT ideology, even though I'm not a fan of it myself, is considered extremistic. Saying the word war and not special military operation is extremistic. Get in the public with one person protest is extremistic. Everything that is not support for Russia and Russian government is extremistic, and these young kids are taught to fight it. And another interesting question, why then it was created? Let's start from a little bit afar. It was created in the end of 2015, not long after the start of Russian aggression against Ukraine, not long after the annexation of Crimea and the beginning of war in Donbass. The main funder of this organization is Russian Minister of Defense. The creator of this organization is Sergei Shoigu, who is the Minister of Defense, who was the Minister of Defense in Russia. And all these facts, they look just way too convenient to be just pure coincidence. That is why I think this is a special Russian project to create highly motivated, prepared and brainwashed special military forces to join the fight against Ukrainians, against Europeans and against West. But why do you think so, you ask, and I answer you. First of all, I look at what they are training there. All the boys and girls since the age of 8 are taught how to use firearms, different type of them. They are taught tactical and drill trainings. They learn hand-to-hand and knife combat, and they are also doing many physical activities, which is good physical activities. The things that I have listed look very similar to the basic military training, and when the kids from the age of 8 to the age of 18 for 10 years straight do this basic military activity, they become damn good effective. Hey there, like, subscribe and leave a comment before they find out. But this is still not the scariest part. The scariest part of this military training for the youngsters, to my mind, is the so-called mandatory, ideologically patriotic education. I think that at least 1/3 of the time in the Yunarmiya, children are taught about the basics and then intricacies of the idea of the Russian world. You may think, haha, ZV, tanks, let's hug a bear and so on. But no, it is really scary, because you don't really know what Russian world is. Pax Moscovica is geopolitically ideological doctrine of the ideas of crazy delusions, like the idea that Russians are God's chosen people that are here on Earth to save it from the satanic forces coming from the West, and the only place on Earth where heaven might be is only in Russia, and only when it gets Belarus and Ukraine as part of it, as the idea of big Russia. It is scary. They believe in the greatness of the mysterious Russian soul, and that it is their mission to save inferior nations and to colonize inferior races, for them not to come under influence of the Western civilization, not to be degraded by the Western culture, which is absolutely horrible, horrible Western culture. And if on their path of saving inferior nations from the Western influence, the nations that don't yet understand the greatness of Russian culture and Russian world, if during this time some villages had to be destroyed, some towns had to be shelled to the submission, if some cities had to be terrorized with constant air attack, well, you can't create an omelet without breaking some shells. And those are just basics of some ideas of the Russian world for you to understand what we're dealing with, who we have to fight with. It is also interesting how do they find new members for this movement. At first, it was more like a volunteer after-school activity where parents could send their children for them not to drink, not to smoke, not to do drugs and so on, to also have some physical capabilities and to learn something new. But the most important part for Russians is that it was free of charge. People didn't have to pay to get to Yunarmiya. But after some time, after the agreement between Russian Ministry of Defense and Russian Ministry of Education, the participation of children in Yunarmiya became mandatory activity. And this is how they have increased the number of members from 300,000 in 2019 to approximately a million by 2023. And right now, I would like you to catch my thought. If I changed the name of the organization from Army of the Youth or Yunarmiya to Hitlerjugend, then you would think that it was some history election. But still, even though Yunarmiya is the biggest youth military organization in Russia, there are many others. And one very important example which shows all the cards is Oprichniki. And here we have to rewind the time a little to the mid-16th century, to be exact. At that time, in the Moscow Tsarat, there was yet no Russia, only Moscovia. There was a pretty interesting ruler of the country, of the Tsarat, Tsar Ivan the Terrible, the one who Russians praise a lot. He wasn't called the Terrible for no reason. Arguably, he was the first dictator of Moscovia, which I don't believe. But here is the truth. He was the initiator of the system of state terror, of governmental terror in Moscovia. And to support his governmental regime, he created his personal army called Oprichniki. Oprichniki were subordinate only to Tsar Ivan, and they had some interesting design choices. They wore only black robes. They always rode horses. They also carried dogs' heads on the necks of the horses, and they also carried brooms. The interesting thing about them is not the design of the outfit, but that they were created to be the instrument of governmental terror. They were the only ones who could cut boyaris and little tsars' heads off. Those are some lesser governmental positions without any penalty. They were untouchable. They couldn't be prosecuted at all. And here we have a state-funded youth organization with the same name, created in 2025 in the end of February. Do you think that they would do something else than the historically accurate Oprichniki? I don't think so. I think they are created to do the state terror. In conclusion, I would like to say that Russia is and always was a warmongering country, a warmongering state. Some may say that we have to appease Russia, we have to give Russia everything they want, or at least something they want. But peace is not the option, only ceasefire is the option. Because Russia is supremacy state. They don't see others as equals, they see others as inferior. And even now, citing the head of intelligence service of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, Russia has never given up on their strategic goals of occupying the whole country of Ukraine and further imperial expansion to the west. They want to rebuild their USSR empire. And in this big picture, the Yunarmiya is not the least of the concerns. Russia continues using the tactics of recruiting people from the occupied territories in their army to be used as cannon fodder, children included. All the children from temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine are mandatorily enrolled in the Army of the Youth, in Yunarmiya. They will be brainwashed and they will be used in the next expansion when it happens. And you all have found out that Ukrainians have great fighting spirit, that being warriors is in our blood. And just imagine the part of the army of such people, of the children that were mandatorily recruited to the Army of the Youth, to Yunarmiya, to be used as cannon fodder or to be used as soldiers in the future attacks on Ukraine and on Europe. What do you think will happen? Thank you all for watching. May God bless you all. See you next time. Peace.